Well, today's focus at COP26 is cities and regions, how to become more energy efficient, with cities currently producing more than 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, mainly from heating and cooling buildings, powering cars and lorries. Well, let's discuss this with John Hart, Republican strategist and co-founder of C3 Solutions. John, a warm welcome to the programme. It's a huge challenge, isn't it? Making cities, some of which are extremely old in terms of their infrastructure and when they were, developed, to become more energy efficient.
Well, Sally, that's exactly right. And the United States is a very large and diverse country. And thankfully, our cities are newer than a lot of your cities, obviously in Europe. But that presents a different set of challenges and opportunities. And, the way we approach this question at C3 Solutions, and that stands for the Conservative Coalition for Climate Solutions, is we believe the primary answer is innovation and economic freedom. We did a very detailed study of economic freedom around the world and found that free countries are twice as clean as less free economies. In other words, countries that have the rule of law, a strong democratic system, strong property rights, which is very important for this topic, they tend to have a much higher environmental performance rating than countries that have top-down, central planning, authoritarian-type governments. And so as we think about cities, I think we have to come with some foundational principles that the best solutions are going to be bottom-up solutions, where you can have a nimble response at the local level and have accountability at the local level, so that cities can adapt and have the same, or rather have different solutions rather than a one-size-fits-all type response. And a difference that our organization and the Republican members that we're working with, John Curtis, Dan Crenshaw, and others, is that while President Biden talks about a whole of government approach, what we want to emphasize is a whole of society approach, where our position is government has a limited role to play. It should have a light touch, but the primary drivers are, again, of solutions in cities, regions, are going to be individuals, property owners, innovators, so that we can get those bottom-up solutions. And that means empowering civil society. Civil society is the space between individuals and government, and that's really where life happens. That's where solutions come up. So that's how we approach this topic at COP.
And what you say makes a lot of sense. It's got to be collaboration at every single level, whether that be within a local community, at national level, etc., at private business, public sector, every organisation. But how many are saying the same thing as you?
Well, not enough. I mean, that's why we're at COP, and I think it's incredibly important and worth noting. And I appreciate you noting this by having us on the program. Is that there's a policy renaissance happening in the United States among the center-right members of Congress on the issue of climate. We're leaning into the topic with our best principles and best ideas. And again, this topic in particular shows that this doesn't have to be a highly polarized partisan issue. Because again, there are very few people in the United States against empowering local governments. It's a common sense position. And anyone who's done any kind of development, I live in more of a rural area. I have 62 acres of farmland that I manage just outside of D.C. And the state and local government does some things really well and some things very poorly. I think government always lags behind the private sector in terms of innovation. So,
but John, if I can interrupt you briefly, sorry, because I'm conscious we're going to run out of time, and I want to make this point, get your response to this. It's one thing to talk about the US, and of course Biden's just got through a massive infrastructure bill, etc. In the US, in the UK, developed countries, we're more able, we have the finance to make this happen. But what about the developing countries? Isn't it really critical that there's agreement at the end of this COP26 as to how much money the rich nations give to the poor to make the difference?
Well, that's a very important question. But again, I think if we want to help the developing world get to a point where they have cleaner economies, is you have to have rule of law, you have to have property rights within those countries. Again, and Bill Gates said the only way to solve climate change is through innovation. It isn't just one way, it's the primary way to do it. So I think that conversation is going to continue to develop. There are a lot of things we could do to promote the deployment of nuclear technology, for example. Small modular nuclear reactors could be deployed at large scale. If we could, perhaps we should set priorities in the United States and other developed countries, spend less and less efficient areas of government, and redirect some of those funds to have a Marshall Plan, if you will.
All right.
On clean.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just conscious we are nearly out of time. Well, we are, in fact. So, John, thank you very much for being on the programme. And as I have said throughout